The last Christmas in the enchanted forest. Snowflakes gently fell over the vast Idaho forest, transforming the pine trees into giant, white, silent sentinels. In the central clearing, where an old oak stretched its branches like protective arms, Max watched his son Luke chase after a particularly bright snowflake. The grey fur of the old shepherd contrasted with the vibrant energy of young Luke, whose golden coat shimmered against the white landscape. On that special December morning, the air carried more than just the winter's chill. Max felt in his weary bones that this would be his last winter in the forest. As Luke joyfully bounded about, Max recalled every trail he had walked, every life he had touched over the years as the unofficial guardian of that piece of land. "Dad! Dad! Look what I found!" Luke barked, bringing a perfectly preserved pine cone in his mouth. Max smiled, recognizing in that simple object an opportunity for teaching. "You know, son, that pine cone reminds me of a story from many winters ago," began Max, his deep voice echoing in the silent clearing. Before he could continue, the flapping of wings interrupted his thoughts. Rachel, the librarian owl, landed on a nearby branch, her amber eyes shining with concern. "Max, we need your help. Henry is having another one of his moments. He's locked himself in his cave and doesn't want to talk to anyone," Rachel whispered, casting a significant glance at the old dog. "The Squirrel brothers tried bringing him some nuts, but he didn't even respond." Luke tilted his head, confused. He had never understood why the enormous bear, who could easily dominate any animal in the forest, showed such fear of social interactions. Max, however, understood perfectly. Years of observation and care had taught him that the greatest battles were not always visible to the eyes. "Luke, come with me," called Max, rising with a dignity that his years had not diminished. "It's time for you to learn something important." As they walked down the trail leading to Henry's cave, Max noticed the squirrel siblings, Felix and Flora, guarding the last of the season's nuts. Their small faces showed relief upon seeing Max pass by, as if his mere presence brought security to the forest. The snow began to fall more heavily as they reached the entrance of Henry's cave. From inside, low sounds of agitation echoed. Max paused, turning to Luke with a serious expression. "Son, sometimes the most powerful strength lies not in teeth or claws, but in the ability to listen and understand," said Max, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Luke watched in wonder as his father approached the cave entrance with soft, deliberate steps. The snow fell upon his grey fur, creating an almost magical aura around him. With a gentle voice that Luke rarely heard, Max began to sing an ancient melody of the forest, a song that spoke of courage, friendship, and the transformative power of love. Gradually, the sounds of agitation within the cave diminished. A large brown snout appeared at the entrance, followed by Henry's worried eyes. The giant bear, who could easily intimidate any creature in the forest, seemed small and vulnerable at that moment. Luke witnessed with growing admiration how his father turned that moment of crisis into a lesson of compassion and understanding. The snow continued to fall, creating a white veil that seemed to isolate that scene from the rest of the world, as if time had paused to allow an eternal lesson to be taught. Around them, other forest animals began to approach quietly. Rachel perched on a nearby branch, Felix and Flora peeked from behind a tree, and even a young deer watched from a distance. They all seemed to understand that they were witnessing something special, not only the momentary healing of Henry's fear, but a demonstration of the true power that Max possessed, the ability to unite the forest through love and understanding. The old shepherd knew his time was coming to an end, but there, in that moment, as he watched his son learning one of life's most important lessons, he felt a deep peace. The legacy he would leave behind would not be measured in achievements or possessions, but in the hearts he had touched and the lives he had transformed. The dawn in Idaho brought with it a golden light filtering through the snow-covered branches. In Rachel's natural library, nestled in the hollow trunk of an old maple, the dry leaves that served as story pages rustled gently with the morning breeze. The owl meticulously organized her collection, each leaf containing precious memories of the forest, written with small marks of beak and claw. Henry, the bear, had not always been solitary. In his youth in the Rocky Mountains, he had been part of a thriving group until hunters decimated his family. Since then, he carried invisible scars that Max had patiently helped heal over the years. The squirrel siblings, Felix and Flora, born during a particularly fierce storm, had lost their parents on the same day. Max found them trembling with cold and hunger, and since then they had become symbols of resilience in the forest. Felix, the older by mere minutes, developed a special talent for predicting weather changes through the behavior of clouds, while Flora became an expert in identifying medicinal plants. Luke, running through the fresh morning snow, stopped to watch a group of small birds gathering around seeds scattered by Flora. His father had taught him that every creature, no matter its size, played a vital role in the balance of the forest. In the depths of the forest, where the pine trees grew so close that they created a natural canopy, there was a circle of ancient stones. It was here that Max used to gather with the elders of the forest during full moon nights, sharing wisdom and making decisions that affected the entire community. The forest held its own traditions. During the winter solstice, all the animals contributed to the grand festival of sharing. The squirrels brought their most special nuts, Rachel shared ancient stories, and Henry, when he participated, used his strength to build snow shelters for the smaller creatures. Max walked more slowly now, his paws leaving deep marks in the snow. Each step was calculated, each movement purposeful. Luke began to notice how the other animals subtly bowed when his father passed by, not out of fear, but from a deep respect built over countless seasons. The old shepherd dog carried with him the knowledge of ancient migratory routes, safe shelters during storms, and water sources that never dried up, even in the hottest summers. This knowledge, accumulated over generations of guardians before him, needed to be passed on. The snow began to fall again, soft as feathers, as father and son made their morning rounds. Luke watched closely as Max communicated with every animal they encountered, always offering a kind word or precise advice, building bridges between different species that, under other circumstances, could have been natural adversaries. Winter advanced relentlessly over the Idaho forest, bringing not only the biting cold, but also an unexpected threat. Rumors of loggers nearby spread rapidly among the inhabitants, echoing like a dark omen through the snow-covered branches. Max, feeling the weight of the years more than ever, gathered the animals in the central clearing. His graying fur contrasted sharply with the snow around him, a silent reminder of his advanced age. Luke, by his side, watched with a mix of admiration and apprehension, aware that this could be the last great crisis his father faced as a guardian. "Friends," Max began, his voice hoarse but firm, "our forest faces a danger we cannot ignore. The loggers threaten not only our trees, but our way of life. We must act together like never before." Rachel, the owl, perched on a nearby branch, her amber eyes reflecting the concern shared by all. "I've already spotted their machines on the eastern edge," she reported, her feathers ruffled with agitation. "They are closer than we would like." Henry, the bear, normally reclusive, emerged from the shadows. His imposing stature, once a source of fear for some, now brought a sense of security. "What can we do?" he asked, his voice a low rumble of determination. Max looked at each animal present, his gaze conveying confidence and purpose. "Each of us has a crucial role. Rachel, your keen eyes will be our first line of defense. Stay vigilant and alert us to any movement from the loggers." The owl solemnly nodded, taking flight to begin her watch. "Henry," Max continued, "your strength will be vital. We need to create natural barriers to hinder their advance. Fallen trees, displaced rocks, use whatever you can to block their paths. The bear grunted in agreement, already mentally planning his strategy. Turning to the squirrel siblings, Felix and Flora, Max continued, "You two, with your agility and knowledge of the forest, will be our scouts. Distract the loggers and lead them away from the most sensitive areas." The squirrels exchanged determined glances, their fluffy tails swaying with anticipation. "And what about me, Dad?" Luke asked, eager to prove his worth. Max looked at his son with a mix of pride and concern. "Luke, your task may be the most important. Lead a group to create false trails, confuse them, make them doubt their maps and plans." In the days that followed, the forest transformed into a silent battlefield. Rachel flew tirelessly, her sharp eyes catching every suspicious movement. Henry worked day and night, moving fallen trunks and stones to create impassable natural mazes. Felix and Flora darted from tree to tree, leaving confusing tracks and misleading signs to disorient the invaders. Other smaller animals joined the effort, camouflaging nests and burrows, making them invisible to human eyes. Luke, taking on his new responsibility seriously, led a diverse group of animals. Together, they created a complex web of false trails, leading the loggers in circles and away from the heart of the forest. Tension peaked when an unexpected snowstorm descended upon the region. The intense cold and reduced visibility tested the resilience and determination of everyone involved. Communication among the groups became a challenge, with Rachel struggling to maintain her aerial vigilance amidst the storm. It was in this critical moment that Luke faced his first great trial as a future guardian. A group of loggers, disoriented by the snowstorm and the false trails, approached dangerously close to the central sanctuary of the forest. With Max temporarily isolated by the storm, the responsibility to act fell on the young shoulders of Luke. Remembering his father's teachings about courage and wisdom, Luke quickly gathered a diverse group of animals. Together, they executed a bold maneuver, creating a series of sounds and movements that not only confused the loggers, but also made them question the safety of continuing their mission in such adverse conditions. Luke's strategy proved successful. The lumberjacks, exhausted and disoriented, decided to retreat temporarily, promising to return when the weather improved. This small victory injected a new wave of hope and determination throughout the forest community. When the snowstorm finally eased, Max found his son. The pride in his eyes was evident, but there was also a shared understanding that the battle was far from over. The old shepherd dog knew his time as a guardian was coming to an end, but he saw in Luke the promise of a bright future for the forest. The threat of the lumberjacks had united the forest like never before. Every animal, from the smallest mouse to the imposing Henry, now understood the importance of working together. The conflict was not resolved, but one thing was certain. The Idaho forest would not yield without a fight, and its collective spirit was stronger than any external threat. As the lumberjack threat loomed over the forest, Rachel, the librarian owl, faced a personal dilemma. Her constant vigilance kept her away from her beloved Leaf Library, where crucial stories of the forest were at risk of being lost. One night, while flying over the eastern area, she spotted a curious young raccoon rummaging through her collection. Torn between her duty to keep watch and her desire to protect the accumulated knowledge, Rachel had to make a difficult decision. Choosing to trust the community, she recruited the raccoon, teaching him how to organize and preserve the stories. This choice not only saved the library, but also integrated a new generation into the tradition of safeguarding the forest's memory. Meanwhile, the squirrel siblings, Felix and Flora, faced an unexpected challenge. Their distraction tactics had worked well, but now they found themselves with dangerously low nut supplies for the winter. The need to balance their role in defending the forest with their own survival tested the limits of their altruism. In a touching demonstration of solidarity, other animals in the forest, from small mice to majestic deer, began to contribute a portion of their own reserves to the squirrels. This act of generosity further strengthened the bonds of the community, proving that the true strength of the forest lay in its unity. Henry, the solitary bear, was on a journey of self-discovery. His crucial role in defending the forest forced him to interact more with other animals, challenging years of self-imposed isolation. Each positive interaction was a small victory over his past fears, gradually transforming the once reclusive bear into a pillar of strength and wisdom for the entire community. One afternoon, Henry surprised everyone by organizing a strategy meeting in his cave, an unthinkable gesture just weeks before. This simple yet significant act symbolized his transformation and inspired others to overcome their own fears for the common good. Luke, for his part, navigated the complexities of his growing leadership. His initial success in diverting the lumberjacks brought new expectations and responsibilities. He found himself torn between the desire to impress his father and the need to find his own leadership style. In a crucial moment, Luke made a misjudgment, nearly exposing a group of smaller animals to danger in an ambitious attempt to sabotage the lumberjacks' equipment. Max's quick intervention prevented a tragedy, but the incident left Luke deeply shaken. This experience forced a candid conversation between father and son. Max, with kindness, helped Luke understand that true leadership isn't about individual heroic acts, but about empowering and protecting the entire community. This lesson proved to be a turning point in Luke's development as the future guardian. As winter deepened, a new concern arose: food scarcity. The conflict with the lumberjacks had disrupted the usual foraging routes and drained many resources. The forest now faced a struggle on two fronts, against human invaders and against hunger. This food crisis brought latent tensions between different groups of animals to the surface. Herbivores and carnivores, once coexisting in a delicate balance, now found themselves competing for increasingly scarce resources. Max recognized that this new threat had the potential to fragment the hard-won unity of the forest. With time running out and his own strength waning, he knew he needed to find a solution that would not only feed the forest, but also reinforce the bonds among its inhabitants. Resolving this crisis would require more than just strategy. It would demand a deep understanding of the interdependence of all beings in the forest. Max realized that this could be his final and most important lesson for Luke and the entire community. Christmas Eve arrived, bringing with it an apparent calm. Snow fell gently, covering the forest with a soft white blanket. However, beneath this superficial tranquility, a palpable tension hung in the air. Max, sensing that his time was running out, gathered all the animals in the central clearing for what he knew would be his last great act as a guardian. As the forest's inhabitants crowded together, curious and apprehensive, Max climbed onto a snow-covered rock, his grizzled figure standing in stark contrast to the white all around. Luke watched his father with a mix of pride and concern, aware of Max's growing fragility. "Friends," began Max, his voice hoarse but firm, "we face challenges that have tested our courage and unity. The lumberjacks threaten our homes, winter challenges our survival, and our own differences threaten to divide us. But today, on this Christmas Eve, I have a revelation to share." A murmur of curiosity spread through the crowd. Rachel perched silently on a branch nearby, her amber eyes fixed on Max. Henry, the bear, emerged from the shadows, his imposing presence commanding respectful glances. Max continued, "For years, I've kept a secret. Deep in the heart of this forest lies a hidden valley, protected by ancient magics of nature. A place where winter is milder, where food grows in abundance." The revelation sparked astonishment. Felix and Flora exchanged incredulous looks, while other animals whispered among themselves, a blend of hope and skepticism coloring their voices. "This valley," Max went on, "could be our refuge, not just from the loggers, but also from the hunger that threatens us. However, there is a price. The valley will only reveal itself if we show true unity, not just among ourselves, but with the very essence of the forest. Luke stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly. "Dad, why did you keep this a secret for so long?" Max looked at his son with eyes filled with wisdom and regret. "Because, Luke, the power of the valley is both a blessing and a responsibility. It demands that we put the needs of the forest above our own. I wasn't sure we were ready for such sacrifice until now." Max's revelation triggered a wave of reactions. Some animals expressed frustration that he had kept such a secret, while others felt renewed hope. The heated debate that followed threatened to divide the already fragile unity of the forest. It was in this critical moment that Luke took a decisive step toward leadership. Climbing onto the rock beside his father, he raised his voice above the tumult. "Listen!" Luke shouted, his voice carrying an authority that surprised everyone, even himself. "My father kept this secret not out of selfishness, but out of caution. He hoped for the moment when we would truly be united to face this challenge." His words silenced the crowd. Luke continued, gaining confidence. "The valley is not just a refuge, it is a test of our ability to put the common good above our individual desires. If we fail this, the valley will remain hidden, along with our best chance for survival." Henry the bear stepped forward, his voice a low rumble of agreement. "The young Luke is right. We have already proven we can overcome our differences in the face of the logger's threat. Now we must go further." Rachel soared into the air, gracefully landing beside Luke. "As the keeper of the forest stories, I can attest, our strength has always been in our unity. This is the moment to honor that tradition." One by one, the animals began to express their support. Felix and Flora, the squirrels, offered to lead search expeditions. The deer proposed sharing their knowledge of edible plants. Even the predators committed to moderating their instincts for the sake of the common good. Max watched, his eyes shining with pride and emotion. He saw in Luke not just his successor, but a leader who could unite the forest in ways he had never imagined. As night fell and the moon cast its silvery glow over the clearing, a sense of renewed purpose permeated the air. The revelation of the hidden valley was not just a solution to their immediate problems, it was a catalyst for a profound transformation in the forest community. Max, feeling his role coming to an end, stepped back, allowing Luke to take center stage. The young dog, once uncertain, now radiated a serene confidence. "Tomorrow," Luke declared, his voice echoing in the silent clearing, "we will begin our journey to the valley. It will not be easy, but together we will find the way. This will be our true Christmas celebration, a rebirth of our forest and our spirit of community." As the animals dispersed, preparing for the great journey ahead, Max and Luke remained on the rock, watching the sleeping forest. The old guardian knew he had witnessed a crucial turning point, not just for the forest, but for his son and the future he represented. The dawn of Christmas Day brought an atmosphere of expectation and apprehension. Max's revelation of the secret valley and Luke's subsequent assumption of leadership triggered a cascade of reactions throughout the forest. The animals gathered in the central clearing, ready to embark on their journey to the mysterious valley. Luke, now firmly in the role of leader, organized the groups with a newfound confidence. Rachel soared overhead, her keen eyes mapping the terrain ahead. Henry, the bear, carried essential supplies on his broad back, his imposing presence inspiring courage in the smaller animals. As the expedition prepared, the consequences of Max's decision began to manifest. Some animals, especially the older and more skeptical ones, voiced doubts about the existence of the valley. "What if it's just a legend?" they whispered among themselves. This uncertainty threatened to undermine the newly formed unity. Luke, sensing the hesitation, addressed the concerns directly. "I understand your fears," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "But remember, our strength lies in trusting each other. The valley is not just a place, It is a symbol of our unity." His words seemed to calm the spirits, at least momentarily. The journey began, with a long line of animals winding through the deep snow. Max, now visibly weakened, insisted on leading the way with Luke by his side, attentive to every step of his father. As they advanced, the challenges grew more intense. The terrain became steeper and trickier. Smaller animals struggled in the deep snow, while larger ones had difficulty maintaining balance on slippery slopes. It was in this moment that the true strength of the community revealed itself. Without hesitation, the larger animals began to help the smaller ones. Henry forged a path through the snowdrifts, creating trails for the others to follow. The squirrels, Felix and Flora, used their agility to scout ahead, identifying the safest routes. Halfway through the journey, a distant sound caught everyone's attention. The echo of chainsaws reverberated through the forest. The loggers had returned, seemingly determined to resume their work even on Christmas Day. Panic threatened to spread among the animals. Some suggested turning back, fearing that the quest for the valley would leave them vulnerable. It was Rachel who brought the necessary perspective. Soaring high, she spotted the loggers and realized something crucial. "They're moving in the opposite direction," she shouted upon her return. "Our confusion tactic worked better than we expected. They're completely disoriented." This news renewed the group's spirits. Luke seized the moment to emphasize the importance of their mission. "Look," he said, "our actions are already protecting our home. Imagine what we can accomplish together in the new valley." The journey continued, each step reinforcing the bonds among the animals. Stories were shared, fears confronted together, and a new mutual understanding began to blossom. As evening fell and fatigue began to weigh on them, Max suddenly stopped. His breath was heavy, and his eyes shone with an unusual intensity. "We're almost there," he announced, his voice barely rising above a whisper. The forest ahead seemed to change subtly. The air grew warmer, and a faint aroma of fresh vegetation permeated the environment, contrasting with the winter chill they had left behind. Luke looked at his father, a silent understanding passing between them. Max had guided them this far, but now it was up to Luke to lead the final stretch of their journey. Nodding to Max, Luke turned to the gathered community. "Friends," he said, his voice filled with emotion and determination, "we are about to enter our new home. Remember, the true miracle isn't the valley itself, but what we've built together to get here." As the group advanced, led by Luke, toward what promised to be a new chapter in their lives, Max stayed back, watching with pride. He knew his mission was complete. The forest was in good hands, united and strong, ready to face any challenge the future might bring. As they entered the secret valley, the forest animals were greeted by a sight that surpassed their most optimistic expectations. The air was noticeably warmer, and the lush vegetation contrasted sharply with the harsh winter they had left behind. Crystal-clear streams wound their way between leafy trees, and ripe fruits hung from low branches, inviting them. Luke, leading the group, felt the weight of responsibility on his young shoulders. The look of admiration and hope in his companion's eyes was both inspiring and intimidating. He knew that finding the valley was just the beginning. Now, they needed to learn how to live in this new environment and protect it. In the days that followed, the community faced unexpected challenges. The abundance of food, initially seen as a blessing, soon became a source of conflict. Some animals, accustomed to scarcity, began hoarding more than they needed, fearing that the abundance would be temporary. Luke realized he needed to intervene before the situation worsened. Gathering everyone in the central clearing of the valley, he proposed a fair system of sharing and rationing. "This valley is a gift," he declared, "but it's also a responsibility. We must care for it and for one another with equal dedication." His proposal was met with mixed reactions. Some, like Henry and Rachel, immediately supported the idea. Others, still trapped in old survival habits, resisted. It was Felix the squirrel who surprised everyone by stepping forward. "I've always been known for my ability to stockpile," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "But Luke is right. We don't need to live in fear of scarcity anymore. I'm willing to share my reserves and trust that together we will take care of one another." Felix's gesture inspired others to follow his example. Gradually, a new culture of cooperation began to form in the valley. Meanwhile, Max watched his son's development with a mix of pride and melancholy. He knew his time was coming to an end, but seeing Luke grow into a leader brought him a profound sense of fulfillment. A new challenge arose when Rachel, during one of her reconnaissance flights, spotted the loggers dangerously approaching the hidden entrance of the valley. The news spread panic among some of the inhabitants, bringing to the surface fears that seemed to have been left behind. Luke, facing his first major test as a leader in a time of crisis, called an emergency meeting. "We can't allow fear to divide us again," he said, his voice steady. "This valley has offered us safety, but now it's our turn to protect it." Inspired by his words, the animals began proposing ideas to defend their new home. Henry suggested using his strength to create natural barriers. The squirrels volunteered to set up an early warning system. Even the smallest inhabitants, like bees and butterflies, offered to confuse and disorient any intruders. Luke coordinated the efforts, delegating tasks and encouraging collaboration among species that had rarely interacted before. His leadership wasn't based on authority, but on inspiring the best in each one. As they worked together to protect the valley, something remarkable began to happen. Old rivalries between predators and prey started to fade away. Animals that had barely tolerated each other now worked side by side, united by a common purpose. Rachel, observing everything from above, noticed a subtle yet significant change in the atmosphere of the valley. "It's as if the valley itself is responding to our union," she remarked to Luke one night. Luke reflected on Rachel's words. He was beginning to understand that the true magic of the valley lay not in its natural abundance or hidden location, but in the power to unite and transform those who inhabited it. One day, while overseeing the construction of a new series of communal burrows, Luke noticed Max watching from a distance. Approaching his father, he saw a look of deep satisfaction in the old dog's eyes. "You've done more than I ever dreamed possible, son," Max said, his voice weak but filled with pride. "You not only found a refuge for our community, but you are creating something truly special here." Luke, moved, hugged his father. "Everything I know about leadership and community, I learned from you, Dad," he replied. Max smiled, knowing his legacy was secure. The valley was not just a new home for the forest animals. It was a symbol of renewal, collective overcoming, and a bright future they would build together. As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink, Luke felt a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. The challenges they had faced had not only strengthened them as individuals, but had united them like never before. The future, though uncertain, now seemed filled with possibilities. Peace in the secret valley was abruptly interrupted one cold morning. Rachel, on her morning patrol, returned with alarming news. The loggers had discovered a trail that led dangerously close to the hidden entrance of the valley. Feeling the weight of responsibility, Luke immediately called for an emergency meeting. The animals gathered in the central clearing, fear palpable in the air. "Friends," Luke began, his voice steady despite the anxiety he felt, "we face our greatest threat yet. But remember, our strength lies in our unity." Henry, the bear, stepped forward. "What can we do, Luke? They have machines and tools. We are just animals." Luke looked at the bear and then at each animal gathered. "We are more than just animals. We are a community. Each of us has unique skills that together can overcome any challenge." With renewed determination, the valley's inhabitants began planning their defense. Felix and Flora, the squirrels, proposed an alarm system using the tallest trees. Rachel volunteered to lead a group of birds on reconnaissance missions. Henry and other larger animals volunteered to create physical barriers at the valley's entrance. As preparations intensified, Luke noticed his father, Max, watching from a distance, his expression a mix of pride and concern. Approaching, Luke asked, "What do you think, Dad? Are we doing the right thing?" Max smiled wearily. "You are leading wisely, son. But remember, true victory isn't about defeating an enemy. It's about protecting what we love without losing who we are." Max's words echoed in Luke's mind as he coordinated the defense efforts. He knew they needed to protect the valley, but he also understood they couldn't become aggressors in the process. In the days that followed, the valley transformed. Trenches were dug, natural camouflage was created, and escape routes were established. Every animal, from the smallest mouse to the largest elk, had a role to play. Working tirelessly, Luke noticed something extraordinary happening. Animals that once barely spoke to each other were now working side by side. Predators and prey coordinated strategies, setting aside old hostilities for the greater good. One afternoon, while inspecting the defenses with Rachel, Luke had an epiphany. "Rachel," he said, "what if we could make the loggers understand the value of this forest without revealing our valley?" Rachel tilted her head, intrigued. "How would we do that, Luke?" "Perhaps," Luke thought aloud, "we can show them the beauty and importance of the forest in a way they cannot ignore." This idea sparked a new wave of activity. The animals began planning not just defenses, but also ways to communicate the significance of their habitat to humans. As the day of confrontation approached, the tension in the valley was palpable, but there was also a sense of shared purpose, a collective determination that transcended individual fear. On the eve of what everyone knew would be the decisive day, Luke gathered all the valley's inhabitants for one last meeting. Looking at the anxious but determined faces, he felt a wave of emotion. "Tomorrow," he began, his voice laden with emotion, "we will face our greatest challenge. But look around us. See what we have built together. This valley, this community, is proof that when we unite, we can accomplish the impossible." A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. Luke continued, "We are not just fighting for our lives. We are fighting for the right of all creatures to live in harmony with nature. Tomorrow, we will show the humans that this forest is more than just trees to be cut down. It is a home, an ecosystem, a whole world that deserves protection." As the sun set, tinting the sky in golden and pink shades, the animals prepared for what was to come. The atmosphere was one of quiet determination. They knew that dawn would bring their greatest test, but they also understood that united, they were ready to face any challenge. Luke, watching his companions retreat to rest, felt a mix of apprehension and hope. Tomorrow was uncertain, but he knew that together they were prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. The dawn arrived with a surreal quietude. The fog hung over the valley, enveloping the trees in an ethereal cloak. Luke, stationed at the hidden entrance, waited with his senses on high alert. Beside him, Henry the bear breathed heavily, his large form a comforting presence. The silence was shattered by Rachel's sharp cry, "They're coming! 3 trucks and a dozen men!" The news spread rapidly. Each animal took its position, ready to execute the plan they had meticulously prepared. Luke cast one last glance at Max, who watched from a nearby hill, unable to participate actively due to his old age, but still a source of moral strength for everyone. The roar of engines echoed through the forest, growing closer. Luke felt his heart race, but maintained his composure. "Remember," he said to those nearby, "our goal is not to harm, but to protect and educate." The loggers arrived at the clearing near the entrance to the valley. As they unloaded their equipment, the animals initiated their strategy. Felix and Flora, leading a group of squirrels, began to rain down pine cones and small branches on the men and their machines. Simultaneously, a chorus of howls, chirps, and roars erupted from the forest, creating a disorienting cacophony. The loggers, caught off guard, looked around in confusion and alarm. Luke gave the signal, and Henry, along with other larger animals, emerged from the shadows. The sight of a massive bear, accompanied by wolves, deer, and moose, caused several men to recoil in shock. Seizing the moment of hesitation, Luke advanced. He knew this was the riskiest part of the plan. Approaching what appeared to be the leader of the loggers, Luke looked directly into the man's eyes, trying to convey intelligence and pleading. The man froze, his hand halfway to his radio. For a tense moment, human and animal locked gazes, a heavy silence descending over the clearing. In this critical instant, something unexpected happened. Max, mustering his last strength, descended the hill and joined Luke. The old dog, his silver coat gleaming in the morning light, radiated an aura of wisdom and dignity that could not be ignored. Inspired by his father's presence, Luke began to bark softly, not in a threatening manner, but in a rhythmic pattern that almost resembled speech. Around him, other animals joined in, creating a symphony of forest sounds that seemed to tell a story. The loggers, paralyzed between fear and fascination, watched as a surreal scene unfolded before them. Birds flew in intricate formations, squirrels and other small animals formed patterns on the ground, and the larger animals moved in a choreographed dance that seemed impossible to be random. Suddenly, a fawn, ignoring its mother's cautious signals, timidly approached the leader of the loggers. The man instinctively crouched down and extended his hand. The fawn sniffed curiously before allowing a brief touch. This moment of connection seemed to break an invisible barrier. The other loggers lowered their tools, looking around with newfound understanding in their eyes. Luke, sensing the change in atmosphere, made a bold gesture. He approached one of the fallen chainsaws and gently nudged it away with his snout, looking imploringly at the leader of the men. The leader, after a moment of hesitation, gestured for his men to retreat. "Shut down the machines," he ordered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We can't do this. This place is special." A collective sigh of relief swept through the animal community. Luke looked at Max, seeing tears in his father's eyes. They had succeeded, not through force or aggression, but by showing the beauty and importance of their world. In the minutes that followed, an extraordinary scene unfolded. Loggers and animals coexisted in the clearing, an ancient barrier momentarily dissolved. Some men took pictures, while others simply watched in wonder. The leader of the loggers approached Luke and Max, kneeling to be at their level. "I can't explain what happened here," he said softly, "but I understand the message. This forest will remain intact, you have my word." As the loggers prepared to leave, Luke felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had protected their home not through conflict, but through mutual understanding. Max, exhausted but glowing with pride, leaned against Luke. "You did this, son," he whispered. "You not only saved our home but built a bridge between two worlds." As the sun climbed into the sky, bathing the clearing in golden light, Luke realized this was not the end of their journey, but the beginning of a new era for the forest and its inhabitants. An era of hope, harmony, and infinite possibilities. In the weeks that followed the confrontation with the loggers, a remarkable change occurred in the forest and the secret valley. News of the extraordinary encounter between humans and animals spread rapidly, attracting the attention of environmentalists, scientists, and local authorities. The leader of the loggers, true to his word, not only halted logging operations, but also became a passionate advocate for preserving the area. He shared his experience with the media, describing the surreal moment of connection with the forest animals. As a result, the region was declared an environmental preservation area. Forest rangers were assigned to protect the area, working in harmony with the animals, who continued to keep the secret valley hidden from human eyes. Luke, now firmly established as the new guardian of the forest, led with a wisdom that surpassed his years. He organized a council of animals where every species had an equal voice, ensuring that decisions were made collectively for the good of all. In his final days, Max looked on with pride at his son's achievements. He saw how Luke had not only protected the forest, but had also elevated the entire community to a new level of cooperation and mutual understanding. The transformation in the forest was profound. Old rivalries between predators and prey gave way to mutual respect and an understanding of the importance of each species in the ecosystem. The animals learned to share resources more efficiently, ensuring that no one went hungry, even during the harshest winters. Rachel the owl expanded her library, now including not only the stories of the forest, but also records of interactions with humans. She became the official historian, ensuring that the lessons learned would be passed on to future generations. Henry, the once solitary bear, became a pillar of the community, using his strength to help others and his newfound kindness to mediate conflicts. The secret valley, once a hidden refuge, became the vibrant heart of a flourishing community. Although still hidden from human eyes, its influence extended far beyond its invisible borders, inspiring a new era of harmonious coexistence between nature and civilization. On a tranquil afternoon, Max called Luke for one last moment together. Lying on the soft grass of the valley, the old dog looked at his son with eyes full of love and pride. "You have exceeded all my expectations, Luke," he said softly. "You have not only protected our home, but created something truly special here. Always remember, true leadership lies in uniting, not dividing." With these words, Max closed his eyes for the last time, leaving a legacy of love, wisdom, and courage that would continue to guide the forest for many generations to come. Luke, gazing at the horizon, felt the weight of responsibility, but also a deep sense of purpose. The future was bright, filled with possibilities and promises of lasting harmony among all the creatures of the forest. Don't drift off just yet, because another story is waiting to be told. The most valuable gift. The swamp of Louisiana awoke with the soft glow of the winter sun, filtering through the intertwined vines and reflecting off the dark waters. The cold air carried the scent of moss and pines, mingled with the distant promise of Christmas. In this magical setting, where nature painted its own canvas of colors and shadows, a young fox with reddish fur and golden eyes attentively observed the scene unfolding before her. Ruby, known for her cunning and wisdom, perched on a twisted branch, her ears perked, picking up every sound from the swamp. Her golden eyes, filled with experience and understanding, fixed on a distant point where a young deer clumsily stumbled among the bushes. Bambi, with his still uncertain hooves and wide-eyed innocence, seemed oblivious to the dangers surrounding him. His mottled coat barely camouflaged him among the winter foliage, and each of his movements made the dry leaves crackle, announcing his presence to the entire swamp. Ruby sighed, shaking her head slightly. For weeks she had been watching the young deer, noting how his lack of caution put him in dangerous situations. But today something felt different. The air carried a strange scent, an odor that made Ruby's fur bristle. Suddenly, a distinct crack echoed through the swamp. Ruby tensed, immediately recognizing the sound of a branch breaking under the weight of a human boot. Hunters. And they were close, dangerously close to where Bambi was grazing distractedly. With the agility characteristic of her kind, Ruby silently slid down the tree trunk, her paws barely touching the damp ground. She needed to act fast, but with caution. One wrong move could alert both Bambi and the hunters. Meanwhile, oblivious to the imminent danger, Bambi continued his carefree exploration. His large brown eyes sparkled with curiosity as he sniffed a new flower bravely blooming among the fallen leaves. The young deer had no idea that every movement brought him closer to the trap that fate seemed to have set for him. Ruby moved like a shadow among the bushes, her senses on high alert. She could hear the muffled voices of the hunters, feel the smell of metal and gunpowder. Time was running out. In a moment of decision, Ruby did something that went against all her instincts of self-preservation. She emerged from her hiding spot, putting herself in plain sight of Bambi. The young deer, startled by her sudden appearance, froze in place. "Don't move," Ruby whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with urgency. "There's danger nearby. Follow me." Silently, Bambi, confused and a bit frightened, hesitated for a moment. But there was something in Ruby's golden eyes, a mixture of determination and concern, that convinced him to trust her. With a grace that contrasted with Bambi's clumsiness, Ruby led the young deer along a winding path through the dense trees and bushes. Every step was calculated, each pause strategic. Ruby used every trick she knew to mask their tracks and confuse any pursuers. Behind them, the sounds of the hunters grew louder, closer. Bambi's heart raced, but he tried hard to imitate Ruby's silent movements. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached a small cave hidden behind a curtain of moss. Ruby gestured for Bambi to enter, and they huddled at the back of the cave, their breaths held as they listened to the heavy footsteps of the hunters pass nearby. Tense minutes ticked by until silence once again reigned over the swamp. Only then did Ruby relax, turning to Bambi with a look that blended relief and determination. "You're lucky to be alive," she said softly but firmly. "The swamp is full of beauty, but also danger. It's time for you to learn to read the signs, to understand the language of nature." Bambi, still trembling slightly, looked at Ruby with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. You saved me. Why?" Ruby smiled, a smile that carried years of wisdom. "Because every life in the swamp is precious, and because I see in you a potential yet to be discovered. But potential without direction is like a river without banks. It can easily get lost." In that moment, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, a decision was made. Ruby, the wise fox, decided it was time to share her knowledge. And Bambi, the clumsy young deer, realized he had much to learn. The swamp around them seemed to whisper with the promise of change, of growth. The dark waters reflected the transforming sky, a mirror of the journey that was about to begin. The Louisiana swamp, with its unique blend of beauty and danger, was a world apart. Vines hung from ancient trees, creating natural curtains that concealed ancient secrets. The dark, calm water reflected the sky, creating the illusion of an inverted world beneath the surface. Ruby, the wise fox, moved through this environment as if she were part of it. Her reddish fur blended perfectly among the autumn leaves, and her golden eyes seemed to capture every movement, every shadow. Years of experience had taught her not just to survive, but to thrive in this challenging ecosystem. Bambi, on the other hand, was still learning to navigate this new world. His once clumsy steps were beginning to gain confidence under Ruby's tutelage. The young deer, with his mottled coat and curious eyes, represented the innocence and growth potential that Ruby saw as essential for the survival of the swamp community. As the lessons progressed, other inhabitants of the swamp began to play important roles in Bambi's education. Jasper, the ancient alligator, was an imposing figure in the waters of the swamp. His wrinkled scales and wise eyes told stories of ancient times, when the swamp was even wilder and more mysterious. "Remember, young Bambi," Jasper said in his raspy voice, "the swamp has memory. Every tree, every stone holds the stories of our ancestors. Learn to listen to them, and you will never be truly lost." Luna, the meteorologist owl, was a fascinating nocturnal figure. Her feathers, a blend of brown and grey, made her almost invisible against the tree trunks. With her large, attentive eyes, she observed the clouds and sensed changes in the air. "The sky speaks to us," Luna taught Bambi during the starry nights. "The clouds, the wind, even the behavior of insects, all of it tells us about the weather that's to come. Being able to read these signs can mean the difference between safety and danger." The raccoon brothers, Tom and Tim, were the masters of practical survival. Their black masks contrasted with their grey fur, and their nimble paws seemed capable of solving any problem. They taught Bambi how to find food in unlikely places and how to create shelters with what nature provided. The key is adaptability, Tom explained as he demonstrated how to crack a particularly tough nut. The swamp is always changing, and we must change with it. And never underestimate the power of teamwork, Tim added, helping his brother reach a high branch. Together, we are stronger than we are alone. As time went on, Bambi began to understand that each inhabitant of the swamp had a unique and vital role in the ecosystem. Ruby's wisdom, Jasper's memory, Luna's foresight, and Tom and Tim's ingenuity all were essential threads in the fabric of the swamp community. The swamp itself seemed to respond to Bambi's evolution. The waters whispered ancient secrets, the wind rustled warnings, and even the shadows seemed to dance with purpose. It was as if the environment were alive, breathing alongside its inhabitants. The approach of Christmas brought a special atmosphere to the swamp. The air grew colder, and a thin layer of frost covered the leaves in the morning. The animals prepared for winter, storing food and reinforcing their shelters. Bambi watched everything with new eyes, now understanding the intricate dance of survival unfolding around him. Ruby observed her pupils' progress with a mix of pride and expectation. She knew that the true test of Bambi was yet to come, but she trusted that the lessons learned and the support of the community would prepare him to face any challenge the swamp might present. As Christmas approached, a subtle tension began to permeate the air of the swamp. Ruby noticed troubling signs: tire tracks in the mud near the shore, remnants of human camps, and an increase in traps hidden among the vegetation. "The hunters are becoming bolder," Ruby explained to Bambi during one of their nighttime lessons. "We need to be more vigilant than ever." Bambi, now more confident in his newly acquired skills, nodded seriously. "What can we do to protect our community?" Ruby's response was interrupted by a sharp cry that cut through the night air. Without hesitation, they both ran toward the sound, moving silently through the underbrush. They arrived at a small clearing to find Tom, one of the raccoon brothers, caught in a metal trap. His brother Tim was desperately trying to free him. "Step back," Ruby commanded, quickly assessing the situation. "Bambi, remember what I taught you about these mechanisms?" Bambi hesitated for a moment, then his eyes lit up with understanding. Carefully he approached the trap, using his hoof to press the hidden lever that Ruby had shown him weeks before. With a metallic snap, the trap opened, freeing Tom. This incident marked the beginning of a series of increasingly significant challenges for the swamp community. In the days that followed, more traps were found, and the sounds of vehicles and human voices became more frequent. Luna, the owl, brought alarming news during an emergency meeting. "There's a large camp of hunters setting up on the north side of the swamp. I've never seen so many at once." Jasper, the elder alligator, shook his head sorrowfully. "In all my years, we have never faced such a great threat. These humans seem determined to empty our home of all wildlife." The tension was palpable among the gathered animals. Some suggested fleeing to more remote areas of the swamp, while others proposed confronting the hunters directly. It was Bambi who surprised everyone with an unexpected suggestion. "What if we used what we've learned to confuse the hunters, instead of just fleeing or fighting?" Ruby looked at her pupil with a mix of surprise and pride. "Go on, Bambi. What's your plan?" Bambi explained his idea, using each animal's unique skills to create a series of distractions and false trails, leading the hunters away from the more populated areas of the swamp. "The raccoons can leave false tracks," he suggested. "Luna can use her calls to mislead their direction at night. And Jasper, well, just his presence would be enough to scare off any human who ventures too close to the water." Bambi's plan was met with a murmur of approval. It was risky, but it offered a chance to protect the community without direct confrontation. In the days that followed, the swamp became a maze of illusions for the hunters. Mysterious footprints appeared and disappeared, leading to dead ends. Strange sounds echoed through the night, disorienting those who ventured into the darkness. And more than one hunter fled in panic after an unexpected encounter with Jasper in the murky waters. Despite the initial success of the plan, pressure on the swamp community continued to mount. The hunters, frustrated by their failures, became more determined and aggressive. One night, while Bambi and Ruby were patrolling the edge of the swamp, they heard the unmistakable sound of a distressed young animal. Without thinking twice, Bambi ran toward the sound, with Ruby close behind, shouting warnings. When they reached a small clearing, they saw a young rabbit trapped in a net. Worse still, human voices were approaching rapidly. Bambi looked at Ruby, fear and determination battling in his eyes. "We can't leave him here." Ruby nodded gravely. "You're right, but saving him might reveal our presence to the hunters. We're about to face our greatest challenge yet." Ding! As the voices drew nearer, Bambi and Ruby prepared to make a choice that could change the fate of the entire swamp. Meanwhile, Luna, the owl, had noticed troubling changes in the climate patterns. Her sensitive feathers detected a sudden drop in temperature approaching, something unusual for this time of year. She knew that an intense cold could be as dangerous as the hunters, especially for the younger and older animals. "We need to prepare," she warned Tom and Tim during one of their nighttime rounds. "Winter is coming early and stronger this year." The raccoon brothers exchanged worried glances. Their food supplies, usually abundant, were low due to the constant presence of the hunters, which limited their foraging areas. "We could try the deeper parts of the swamp," Tom suggested. "Humans rarely venture there." Tim shook his head. "That's risky. The waters are treacherous, and Jasper mentioned there are larger predators in those areas." This new climatic threat added extra pressure to the already tense situation in the swamp. The animals now faced a dilemma: risk encountering the hunters to stock up on supplies, or face a harsh winter with limited resources. In the meantime, Jasper, the elder alligator, faced his own challenges. His wisdom was crucial for the survival of the community, but his advanced age made him vulnerable. The impending cold could force him into hibernation, depriving the swamp of its most experienced guardian at a time of great need. Aware of his fragility, Jasper began sharing his deeper knowledge with the younger animals. He spent hours with Bambi, teaching him the secrets of underwater currents and the best hiding spots in the murky waters. "Remember, young deer," Jasper said in his gravelly voice, "the swamp is more than just water and mud. It's a living being with its own rhythms and secrets. Learn to become one with it, and it will always protect you." Jasper's lessons were not just about physical survival, but also about leadership and responsibility. He saw potential in Bambi to unite the community, a skill that would be crucial in the tough times ahead. As these subplots developed, they intertwined with the main conflict, creating a complex web of challenges and alliances. The threat of the hunters was no longer the only problem to face. Now nature itself seemed to turn against them. The pressure of time intensified. With winter approaching rapidly, every decision made by the animals of the swamp carried even greater weight. A wrong move could not only expose them to the hunters, but also leave them vulnerable to the elements. Amidst all this, a story of hope began to emerge. The younger animals of the swamp, inspired by Bambi's example, began to show surprising courage and resilience. Small acts of bravery and compassion flourished throughout the swamp. A group of frogs helping a family of ducks find a new home after their nest was destroyed. Squirrels sharing their scarce supplies with the less fortunate. This wave of solidarity did not go unnoticed. Ruby watched with a mixture of pride and concern, knowing that this unity would be their greatest strength against the threats they faced, but also fearing it could make them more vulnerable if something went wrong. As Christmas Day approached, the swamp found itself at a turning point. The decisions made in the next hours would shape not only the immediate fate of the animals, but the future of the entire ecosystem. Bambi, now at the center of all these intertwined narratives, felt the weight of responsibility grow. He knew that the true test of his journey was about to begin, and that the lessons learned would be put to the test in ways he could never have imagined. Christmas Eve arrived in the swamp with a deceptive stillness. The air was thick, charged with tension and expectation. Bambi, Ruby, and the other community leaders gathered in a secret location to discuss their next steps. "The hunters are moving into the heart of the swamp," Luna reported, silently landing on a branch above them. "They plan a major hunt for Christmas Day." A murmur of fear swept through the group. Jasper, his voice weaker due to the intensifying cold, spoke up. "We've never faced such a great threat in all these years." Ruby looked at Bambi, noticing the determination in his eyes. "What are your thoughts, young one?" Bambi took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all the gazes upon him. "We have two options. We can flee or we can stay and fight. But what if there was a third way?" The animals leaned in, curious. Bambi continued, "What if we could help the hunters see the swamp as we do? Not as a place to exploit, but as a home to be protected." The idea was bold, almost unthinkable. How could humans understand? At that moment, a sound echoed through the swamp, the distinct cry of a human child. Everyone froze. "It must be from the hunter's camp," whispered Tom. "No," Luna said, her large eyes capturing the distant scene. "It's a little girl. She got lost in the forest." The group fell silent, torn between fear of humans and compassion for the lost child. It was Bambi who broke the impasse. "This is our chance," he said, his voice trembling slightly but firm. "We can show humans that we are more than prey. We can help the child." Ruby looked at him, a mix of pride and concern in her gaze. "It's very risky, Bambi. You could be captured, or worse." "I know," Bambi replied. "But if we do nothing, nothing will change. This is the moment to put into practice everything we've learned." The decision was made. Guided by Luna from above, Bambi ventured toward the crying sound. The rest of the animals prepared for what could be their most important role yet. Bambi found the little girl curled up under a tree, trembling from cold and fear. Carefully he approached, his movements gentle and calm as Ruby had taught him. The girl looked up, her eyes widening in surprise and then softening. Bambi lowered his head, inviting her to follow him. Slowly, he guided the child through the swamp. With each step, the forest animals revealed themselves, rabbits hopping gracefully beside her, fireflies lighting the way, and even Jasper briefly surfacing from the water to offer a reassuring nod. It was as if the swamp itself was alive, showcasing its beauty and mystery. Meanwhile, Ruby and the others worked quickly. Using their combined skills, they created a safe path leading directly to the hunter's camp. When Bambi and the little girl emerged from the forest into view of the camp, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then, shouts of joy and disbelief echoed as the girl's parents rushed forward to embrace her. Bambi stood hesitantly at the edge of the clearing. The girl turned, her eyes shining with tears of gratitude, and reached out her hand toward him. In that moment, something shifted. The hunters, seeing not a prey but a savior, lowered their weapons. The girl recounted her story, describing how the animals of the forest guided her home. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, looking at Bambi with a mix of admiration and shame. "We have spent so much time viewing this forest as a resource," he said, "that we forgot it is a home." The word spread quickly. In the days that followed, the hunters not only left, but also committed to protecting the swamp. The story of the little girl saved by the forest animals became a local legend, inspiring a new era of conservation. For Bambi and the swamp's animals, it was more than a victory. It was a transformation. They not only saved their home, but also built a bridge of understanding with the humans they once feared. As the sun rose on Christmas morning, the swamp felt different. Not for the absence of threat, but for the presence of something new. hope. Bambi looked at Ruby, his eyes reflecting the pride he saw in hers. "The most valuable gift," Ruby said softly, "is not just the wisdom to survive, but the courage to change the world around us." In the days following the rescue of the little girl, the swamp underwent a remarkable transformation. News of the event spread quickly, not only among the animals but also among the neighboring human communities. The hunters, deeply affected by what had transpired, not only ceased their activities in the swamp but also became its fiercest defenders. The leader of the group, a man named John, became the unofficial spokesperson for swamp preservation. "What we witnessed here was more than just an act of animal kindness," John explained to local journalists who came to cover the story. "It was a lesson in compassion and coexistence that we will never forget." For the animals of the swamp, the changes were equally profound. Bambi, once seen as a clumsy young deer, was now respected as a wise and courageous leader. His risky decision to help the human child proved to be the catalyst for a new era for the swamp community. Ruby watched her pupil with a mix of pride and admiration. "You exceeded all my expectations, Bambi," she said during one of their nighttime walks. "Your courage not only saved us, but also changed the hearts of the humans." Bambi, still adjusting to his new role, humbly replied, "I just did what I thought was right. It was everyone's effort that made this possible." The change in human attitudes brought immediate benefits to the ecosystem. With the cessation of hunting, animals could move more freely, allowing species that had become rare to begin to reappear. Luna, in her nighttime flights, reported with enthusiasm, "I'm seeing bird species that haven't appeared in years. The balance is being restored." The raccoon brothers Tom and Tim noticed a significant improvement in water quality and fish abundance. "It's like the swamp itself is breathing a sigh of relief," Tim commented. However, not all consequences were immediately positive. The sudden fame of the swamp attracted curious visitors and tourists, creating new challenges for the forest inhabitants. Jasper, the wise alligator, voiced his concern during an animal council meeting. "We must be careful that our victory doesn't become our downfall. Too much human attention can be as harmful as hunting." Ruby agreed. Jasper is right. We need to find a balance between openness and protection. This new reality required the animals to develop new skills. Bambi and Ruby began training the younger animals not only in survival techniques, but also in how to interact safely and beneficially with well-meaning humans. The local human community, inspired by their story, initiated environmental education programs. Children from the area started visiting the swamp to learn about its unique ecosystem and the importance of its preservation. John, the former hunter, became a guide for these excursions, often retelling the rescue story with reverence. "That deer taught us more about humanity than many humans," he would say to impressed visitors. As winter progressed, the swamp faced new challenges. The intense cold, forecasted by Luna, arrived with full force. However, the community was more prepared and united than ever. The animals worked together to create warmer shelters and stockpile food. The humans, now allies, provided extra supplies and veterinary assistance when needed. Bambi, witnessing all this cooperation, reflected on how far they had come. The true gift, he thought, was not just saving our home, but creating a new way to live within it. As the year came to an end, the Louisiana swamp was no longer just an endangered ecosystem, but a symbol of hope and harmonious coexistence between humans and nature. With the arrival of the new year, the swamp faced unexpected challenges that tested the newly formed alliance between animals and humans. A severe storm hit the region, causing widespread flooding and destruction. Bambi, now recognized as a leader, faced his first major crisis. "We need to evacuate the low areas immediately," he instructed, his voice firm yet gentle. Ruby, by his side, nodded in approval. The animal community quickly mobilized. Luna flew over the swamp, identifying safe routes and risk areas. The raccoon brothers, Tom and Tim, led rescue teams, using their skills to navigate the turbulent waters. Jasper, despite his advanced age, emerged from the depths to guide aquatic animals to safer waters. "Remember," he shouted above the roar of the storm, "the swamp always finds a new balance. Our task is to survive to see that day." The true test came when Bambi realized that the humans from the nearby town were also in danger. Without hesitation, he made a courageous decision. We need to help them, just as they helped us. This decision was met with surprise and concern from some animals. "It's too risky," argued one of the older deer. "We could lose everything we've gained." Bambi, recalling Ruby's lessons on leadership, replied, "If we don't help now, what does our alliance really mean? This is our chance to prove that compassion knows no boundaries between species." With renewed determination, the swamp animals united to assist their human neighbors. Bambi and other deer guided lost people to higher ground. The raccoons used their agility to retrieve vital supplies from flooded homes. Even Jasper helped, using his strength to move debris and clear blocked paths. The scene was surreal. Humans and animals working side by side to overcome the calamity. John, the former hunter, now worked tirelessly to coordinate rescue efforts, frequently consulting Bambi and Ruby. "I never imagined I would be doing this," John commented to Bambi during a brief moment of rest. "You continue to surprise us and teach us." As the waters began to recede, new challenges emerged. Parts of the natural habitat had been destroyed, and both animals and humans faced shortages of food and shelter. Bambi, demonstrating wisdom beyond his years, proposed an audacious plan. "Let's rebuild together, not just our separate homes, but a shared home where we all can thrive." This plan required animals and humans to learn new skills and overcome deeply ingrained prejudices. Bambi worked tirelessly, mediating conflicts and inspiring cooperation. Ruby, observing her pupil's growth, remarked, "You're not just leading, Bambi. You're transforming the very concept of community." The following months were filled with hard work and mutual learning. Humans learned sustainable building and farming techniques that respected the swamp's ecosystem. The animals, in turn, discovered new ways to adapt their habitats, making them more resilient to future storms. Luna expanded her role, not only predicting the weather, but also teaching humans the subtle signs of nature. "Shared knowledge is our best defense," she often said. Tom and Tim became enthusiastic ambassadors, working with human children to teach them about life in the swamp. Their hands-on survival and conservation lessons became immensely popular. Jasper, in his twilight years, found a new purpose as a storyteller, sharing the rich history of the swamp with young ones of all species. "Our stories are the glue that holds our community together," he reflected. As spring arrived, bringing new life to the swamp, the transformation was visible. Homes and nests coexisted harmoniously. Shared gardens flourished, providing food for everyone. The line separating animal habitat from human territory had become blurred, replaced by a truly integrated ecosystem. Bambi, observing all of this from a hill, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Ruby joined him, her eyes shining with pride. "You've done something extraordinary here," she said softly. "You didn't just save the swamp. You transformed it into something more magnificent than we ever imagined." Bambi smiled, his eyes reflecting the renewed landscape before them. "We did this together," he replied, "and this is just the beginning of our journey." As summer approached, a new threat emerged on the horizon of the revitalized swamp. Rumors of a large development project began to circulate, threatening to destroy much of the restored habitat. Bambi called for an urgent meeting with all the leaders of the community, both animals and humans. "We face a new challenge," he announced, his voice calm but determined, "one that will require all our unity and wisdom." John, representing the humans, explained the situation. A large corporation plans to build a luxury resort here. They have money and political influence. This will be our toughest battle yet. Ruby, ever insightful, observed, "We can't fight them the same way we fought the hunters or the storm. We need a new approach." Luna, who had expanded her network of information beyond the swamp, brought crucial news. The CEO of the corporation will be visiting in person next week to inspect the area. This may be our only chance to change the course of things. Bambi, absorbing all the information, proposed an audacious plan. Let's show him the true value of the swamp, not just as a piece of land, but as a living, interconnected home. The following days were filled with intense preparation. Each member of the community had a role to play. Luna and her assistants worked tirelessly to map the migration routes of the birds and other vital patterns of the ecosystem. Tom and Tim organized groups of young animals and human children to create visual presentations showcasing the unique biodiversity of the swamp. Jasper, with his deep and wise voice, recorded narrations about the history and cultural importance of the swamp. John and other former hunters prepared economic data, demonstrating how sustainable ecotourism could be more profitable in the long run than a resort. Bambi and Ruby oversaw everything, ensuring that each element fit perfectly into their overall vision. "Remember," Bambi emphasized, "we're not just defending our home, we're offering a new vision of how humans and nature can coexist and thrive together." As the day of the CEO's visit approached, the tension in the swamp was palpable. There was so much at stake, and everyone felt the weight of responsibility. On the eve of the big presentation, Bambi found a moment of quiet by the water's edge. Ruby joined him, sensing his restlessness. "You're ready for this, Bambi," she said softly. "You've guided us through storms, changed hardened hearts, and united species. This is just another step in our journey." Bambi nodded, grateful for his mentor's confidence. "It's more than just saving our home now, isn't it?" he reflected. "It's about showing the world a new way." Ruby smiled, her eyes shining with pride and hope. "Exactly. And regardless of the outcome tomorrow, what we've built here is already a victory that no one can take away from us." As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the swamp community gathered for a communal dinner. It was a scene of harmony that would have seemed impossible just a year before. Deer and humans side by side, raccoons sharing stories with children. Luna comfortably perched on John's shoulder. Bambi looked around, his heart full of love and determination. Tomorrow they would face their greatest challenge. But in that moment, surrounded by his unlikely and united family, he knew they had already achieved something precious and invaluable. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, the swamp community prepared for sleep, their hearts filled with hope and ready for what the dawn would bring. The day dawned, with a soft mist hovering over the swamp, as if nature itself were holding its breath. Bambi, Ruby, and the other community leaders gathered in the central clearing, making final adjustments to their presentation. In the distance, the sound of engines announced the arrival of the CEO's entourage. John and a few other humans went to greet them, carefully guiding them along the swamp's paths. The CEO, a middle-aged man named Richard, arrived with a skeptical expression. "I hope this is quick," he murmured to his assistant. "We have a tight schedule." But as he ventured deeper into the swamp, his expression began to change. The sounds, the scents, the raw, wild beauty of the place began to touch him in a way he hadn't expected. When they reached the main clearing, Richard was momentarily speechless. Before him was a scene that defied everything he knew, animals and humans side by side, ready to deliver a unified presentation. Bambi stepped forward, his eyes meeting Richard's. For a moment, there was a silent connection, a mutual understanding that something extraordinary was about to unfold. John began, "Mr. Richard, welcome to our home. What you are about to see and hear may seem unbelievable, but I assure you, it is as real as the ground beneath your feet." The presentation commenced with Luna and her birds demonstrating the complex migratory routes that pass through the swamp. Living maps formed in the sky, illustrating how crucial the area was for countless species. Tom and Tim led a group of human children and young animals in a performance showcasing the incredible biodiversity of the swamp. Each child represented a different species, demonstrating how all were interconnected in a delicate web of life. Jasper, his voice amplified by a discrete sound system, narrated the story of the swamp, intertwining ancient legends with modern scientific facts. His storytelling painted a vivid picture of an ecosystem that was not only beautiful, but vital for the environmental balance of the entire region. Richard watched in a mix of fascination and disbelief. His initial skepticism was giving way to a sense of admiration he hadn't felt since childhood. Then came the moment of Bambi. The young deer stepped forward, his presence radiating a calmness and wisdom that beautifully contradicted his youth. "Mr. Richard," Bambi began, his voice translated by a special device developed for the occasion. "What you see before you is not just a piece of land or a potential development. It is a home for thousands of beings, each playing a vital role in the balance of this ecosystem." Bambi continued, his voice gaining strength. "But more than that, what we have here is a model for the future. A future where humans and nature not only coexist, but thrive together. Where progress does not come at the cost of destruction, but through harmony and mutual respect." As Bambi spoke, images and holograms around the clearing illustrated his words, showing the before and after of the swamp, the ongoing conservation projects, and the future possibilities of truly sustainable development. "We are not asking you to abandon your plans," Bambi concluded. "We are offering an alternative. A chance to be part of something revolutionary, something that could change not only this swamp, but the way the world views development and conservation." There was a moment of silence when Bambi finished. Richard remained still, his eyes scanning the swamp, the people, the animals. Then, to everyone's surprise, he knelt down, meeting Bambi at eye level. "In all my years of business," Richard said, his voice choked with emotion, "I have never seen anything like this. You are not just protecting a piece of land. You are protecting the future." He stood up, addressing everyone. "You can consider the resort project cancelled. Instead, I would like to propose a partnership. Let's work together to develop this place as a model of conservation and sustainable coexistence." The clearing erupted in celebration. Animals and humans embraced, tears of joy flowing freely. Bambi looked at Ruby, his eyes shining with pride and gratitude. In that moment, under the midday sun, the future of the swamp and perhaps the world changed forever. In the weeks and months that followed Richard's historic decision, the Louisiana swamp witnessed a remarkable transformation. What was once a battle for survival became an innovative model of coexistence and sustainable development. The luxury resort project was completely reimagined. In its place, a state-of-the-art environmental research and education center emerged, harmoniously integrated into the swamp's ecosystem. Scientists from around the world came to study the delicate balance achieved between human progress and natural preservation. Bambi, now recognized as a visionary leader among both animals and humans, continued to play a crucial role. He worked tirelessly to ensure that the voices of all the swamp's inhabitants were heard and respected in the new venture. Ruby, observing her pupil's growth, couldn't help but feel immense pride. "You have exceeded all my expectations," she told Bambi during one of their walks. "You didn't just save our home. You created a new path for the future." The impact of the change was felt throughout the community. The Raccoon brothers, Tom and Tim, became popular educators, leading tours that taught visitors about the intricate web of life in the swamp. Luna expanded her role, working with human meteorologists to develop more accurate climate prediction models, benefiting both wildlife and human communities. Jasper, in his later years, saw his dream of a protected and respected swamp become a reality. His stories and wisdom were recorded and became an essential part of the educational curriculum at the new center. John, the former hunter, became a passionate conservation advocate, traveling across the country to share the inspiring story of the swamp and promote similar initiatives elsewhere. As the seasons changed, the swamp flourished in ways no one could have predicted. Biodiversity increased, species long absent returned, and ecological balance strengthened. For Bambi, each new day brought confirmation that the choice to extend a hoof in friendship and understanding had been the right one. He saw young deer playing fearlessly alongside human children, learning from one another and growing with a deep respect for nature. On a quiet afternoon, as the sun set over the swamp, painting the sky in golden hues, Bambi reflected on the incredible journey he had taken. From an awkward, naive young deer, he had become a leader who had changed the fate of an entire community. Ruby, sensing her protégé's thoughts, approached quietly. "The true gift," she said softly, "was not just saving the swamp, but showing the world that a different future is possible." Bambi nodded, his heart full of gratitude and hope. Together, they watched the swamp, now more than ever their home, knowing that the legacy they had created would continue to inspire and transform lives for generations to come. Years passed, and the Louisiana swamp became a beacon of hope and innovation. Visitors from around the world came to witness the miracle of harmonious coexistence between humans and nature. Bambi, now a wise leader, continued to guide both animals and humans, his legend growing with each passing year. The lessons learned in the swamp spread far and wide, inspiring similar projects in other threatened ecosystems. In her final days, Ruby watched with satisfaction the legacy she had helped create. The future she had only dreamed of had become a reality. And so, the swamp thrived, a living testament to the power of understanding, compassion, and unity among all creatures. Sleep tight, little dreamers. I'll be here again tomorrow with new tales for us to enjoy together.